Hello and welcome to the Rugby Gods podcast. I'm John Keenan. No mai haere mai. Today is June 19th and now let's talk some rugby. Okay, so it's Friday. It's one day before Super Rugby Aotearoa round 2. So I'm pretty much just going to give us a 30-minute overview, something like that, of the two games coming up this weekend. Remember, round 1, round 2, round 3, so last weekend, this weekend, and next weekend, there will just be the 2 New Zealand games. But from round 4 for Super Rugby Aotearoa, Australia is essentially going to have a compatible, or like basically a competition running in parallel over in Australia, which they're going to be calling Super Rugby AU. So that's going to be starting in 2 weeks' time. Not this weekend, not next weekend, but 2 weeks from now. So I'll also be doing, when that turns up, I'll also be giving that a pretty quick once-over just to fill you in if you're any sort of Australian rugby supporter. And of course, I'll be at least watching some of the games and certainly watching the highlights so that I can give a little bit of feedback in the reviews on a Monday, Tuesday. But for now, like I just said, it's round 2 of Super Rugby Aotearoa, and that's all we've got at the moment. So let's have a look at the 2 games. The first game will be from Hamilton. It's the Chiefs versus the Blues. So Chiefs at home in Hamilton against the Blues. Second game on Sunday will be from Wellington, and it will be the Hurricanes versus the Crusaders. So the Hurricanes at home to the Crusaders there. So yeah, basically 2 teams that lost last week. Chiefs losing, pretty close, pretty tight, last minute stuff. Underperforming, I think, would be the general consensus of that Chiefs team last week. And they got the comeuppance. Well done to the Highlanders. So they're coming up a loss and playing second round at home. And then, the Hurricanes were, pretty efficiently put away, really, by the Blues at Eden Park, certainly in the second half, dealt with very effectively. And they're also coming off a loss, to play their first home game and, second game, or second round game. They'll be up against the Crusaders, who had the bye last week. So, yeah, that will be a very interesting little thing to see. Does that make the Crusaders better for having had sort of like an extra week of preseason? Or can you, well, I think most people who have played rugby kind of know that you can't really make up for sort of like match fitness or like match hardness. You really just got to get out there and start playing games, start playing your season. So the Crusaders could well be, could be a little bit of an Achilles heel. They might actually be a little bit rusty in comparison to a second week Hurricanes. That's certainly my hope as a Hurricanes man. But I'm not sure how actually confident I truly believe that kind of statement to be. But we'll come to that game a little bit later. Let's start with the first one, which is the Saturday game. So round 2, game 1, Chiefs at home to the Blues. So I'm going to post a link to the match centers, I think, in the show notes below this video. I'm certainly going to post a link to basically Stuff Rugby scoreboard. So the Stuff Rugby scoreboard is kind of like it's a website, but it kind of looks a bit like an app, and you can basically click through it round by round. As teams are named, it gets updated and the teams are there, and it has a little bit of commentary around like who's in, who's out, why, etc., what the conditions might be like, some of the records, maybe the last 5 games at home or at the home ground, or the last 10 games between the 2 teams, etc. So it gives you quite a little bit, like quite a good amount of information, and it's quite easy to look through. And I think it's quite easy to look through both on a laptop computer and something like a tablet or a phone. So I'm going to provide a link there, and that will basically, from there you can look through the 4 teams, the team sheets, etc. And there's plenty of linked content to Stuff Rugby articles. So I've used that along with super.rugby, which is the Super Rugby official home webpage. to, you know, just sort of have a look at some maybe key ins and outs, mostly really just key ins for the games, and then also maybe just bring up a couple of quick talking points, because again, like I've said a couple of times last week or in the last few shows, I really want to try and keep these you know, previews and reviews of a round, I want to try and keep them to like 30 minutes. So, you know, as you can see, maybe I've already talked for 5 kind of introducing, and I really just want to try and get through the 2 games, you know, 10 to 12 minutes each, not be too, you know, analyst driven. I'm not actually an analyst, and I just don't think you need it or want it, and you can find it by yourself. Yeah, so let's go through. I'm going to start with the Chiefs. Obviously, they're the home team. So I'm going to start with the Chiefs. I'm just going to pick out a few players that I've found interesting, just in terms of you know, were they there or were they not there, or were they on the bench, etc. last week. So first player is the lock Akoi, Natua Akoi, who was on the bench last week and came on pretty early in the game and played pretty well. I think he probably got a pretty solid like 60 minutes. He was certainly on as injury replacement in the first half, and basically, yeah, he retains his spot and gets a start. So he'll be starting at 5 against the Blues. So I think, you know, a good decision. It's kind of one that's forced by injury more than anything. But you know, I liked what I saw from him last week, and yeah, I hope he goes well getting the start. If we go kind of more out into the backs, having a look at Brad Weber. So Brad Weber has retained the captaincy. He's going to start 9, and he's retained the captaincy because there is still no Sam Cane second week or second round for the Chiefs with no Sam Cane. So Weber to start 9 and Weber to captain like he did last week. I might come back to that a little bit. In fact, actually, I'll just say it now. So yeah, Weber's the captain, and they've provided no basically injury and or replacement cover. So there's no bench 9 for the Chiefs this week, which is, you know, quite an interesting thing to think about. If you go to 10, Cruden has replaced the Trask and has moved up to start 10. Trask has been rotated back, you know, onto the bench. I guess he's playing, that'd be 22, I guess, because I'm pretty sure the Chiefs have gone in with a 6-2 split, so 6 forwards, 2 backs for this game. And they're, like I just said, they're not backing Weber up. They've got no specialist backup halfback, very risky. They're backing Cruden up with Trask, and then they have, you know, one more player that we'll talk about a little bit later, or quite soon. So yeah, Akoi getting the start at 5. Weber to captain from 9, not backed up from the bench, and Cruden to start from 10. So some interesting picks there, or some interesting things going on with the Chiefs team. If we do go to the bench though, I'm just going to look through some of the players. 19, 20, and 21. Now, like I said, usually 21 would be a halfback, but here, essentially 19, 20, 21, the Chiefs have basically gone in with 3 loose forwards, as far as I'm aware. So they've got Thompson, Adam Thompson that is, who actually was playing for the All Blacks back in 2011. I'm pretty sure he was a World Cup winning All Black in the 2011 team, and he's still around the traps in 2020. So yeah, I mean, like, shout out to Adam Thompson. He's definitely had a bit of a wide-ranging career in the last sort of like five years or so. He's played a bit of time in Japan, a little bit of time in Australia, etc. And now he's back with the Chiefs squad, and he's going to be starting off the bench in a pretty big game. So yeah, pretty cool to have like such an experience, such a warrior, basically, playing 19 for the Chiefs. I think they'll love that. So yeah, they've got him at 19, which you would usually say is a lock, but I think most people would think of Adam Thompson as kind of like a 6'8". Certainly that's what he's done for most of his career. They've got Nell at 20, I think it's Dylan Nell, who's an open side, and they've got Milo Harris at 21. So they've basically gone in with 3 loose forwards, almost like a complete like 6, 7, 8 replacement there, with, I guess, Adam Thompson, you know, potentially, you know, being able to play lock at a stretch. So yeah, pretty interesting. Kind of, you know, makes you think that basically the locks are going to have to play 80 minutes for the Chiefs, which, you know, might not be too much of an issue. But yeah, there's basically three replacement loose forwards good to go. and no halfback, like I said, like 4 or 5 times now. One more person to look at, or one more player to look at there, is Solomon Alaimalo. He's been listed at 23, which I think is a very good pick for the Chiefs. He wasn't in the 23 last week. I think they had Nanai Satoru as their 23, sort of like, you know, utility, primarily back 3 cover, wing cover. But they've gone with Alaimalo for this game, and I think that's a really good pick. But yeah, a very strange sort of 6-2 split there. You know, 3 loose forwards, no halfback, and really with Alaimalo at 23 as well, you don't really have like midfield cover either. Like I would say that Alaimalo is pretty much an out-and-out back 3 guy. You can certainly play fullback very well and on the wing, but I don't really feel like he's got the ability to back up your midfield. And if you've got 22 as Caleb Trask backing up Cruden at 10, again, kind of an underweight 10. He's not the kind of guy you can push out to 12 or effectively. Cruden is the same. So yeah, there's definitely some strange things going on with that Chiefs matchup or lineup. And you know, I think Gatland's taking a huge risk, and I think he's really just gambling on not getting injuries. I mean, if you just look at it, I mean, Brad Weber's captaining with no backup 9. I'm sorry to have said that 5 times now, but it just really is very, very important that there is no backup 9. You know, if he is to go down at sort of the 20-25 minute mark with some sort of injury, concussion, what have you, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, obviously the play must be to bring Damian McKenzie into play 9, but I mean, really, like, you're going to be up against the Blues, you're going to be playing Damian McKenzie potentially, say, for 50-60 minutes of the game at 9. I mean, that's definitely losing in terms of he's not going to provide great service. I think we can all admit that. He will do a good job, he'll do as best he can, and no doubt he's been training pretty hard there as cover, but you know, he's definitely going to be off the pace in terms of like a Super Rugby level halfback. And then you're also denying yourself the ability to have him be creative in your back 3, or, you know, have him, you know, play 10 and be, you know, like fit in and play in the playmaker role, maybe late in the game, you know, if Cruden isn't going so well. So, I mean, it seems a little bit like madness to me. Not particularly in love with Gatland's sort of 6-2 pick there, and then like no backup 9. Like, yeah, I can't see that working out well. I mean, good luck to the Chiefs. They've basically put everything in the hands of the injury rugby gods, if you will. So yeah, hopefully there's no injuries there to, you know, any meaningful positions. Otherwise, I think they're going to be caught short. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone over some of my points here. I mean, there's basically no lock cover. There's 3 loose forwards. There's no 9 cover. There's not really any midfield cover. Although obviously, I think you would probably play Sean Wainui in the midfield. You know, he's the Chiefs winger. But yeah, again, you know, maybe not exactly like the best coverage there. When you're dealing with 3 pretty little guys in terms of Damian McKenzie, Aaron Cruden, and Caleb Trask to be your essentially your 3 10s, or, you know, playing 3 guys that can play 10. You know, you really are like opening yourself up to some limitations in terms of covering the midfield, you know, even covering the wings. So yeah, good luck to the Chiefs, I guess, with that kind of makeup. Hopefully, it's not the determining factor, and, you know, ruins basically a tight contest with, you know, 1 or 2 key injuries. We have a quick look over at the Blues. There's not that much to talk about really, or I don't have that much to talk about. They're very solid. Like they're very set from what they did last week. The team they had last week with against the Hurricanes. I think essentially the back line is just completely the same, including the subs in terms of I think they've got Christie, Plummer, and Duffy on the bench, and it's just the same starting back line. So that's pretty nice consistency for the Blues, and, you know, hey, why not? I mean, I think like we can all agree they certainly were dominant, and probably really should have won the game against the Hurricanes by more than 10 last week. What they have done though, a little bit of injury forced replacement in and around their back row. So Gibson was gone in the game pretty early. last week. He was playing, or he started 7 for the Blues last week, and Tom Robinson picked up an injury as well through the game, or I'm not sure if he played the full 80 minutes or not, but he was injured in the game last week too. So they're missing sort of like their starting 7, starting 6 from last week, but that gives basically Dalton Papali'i the ability to actually start 7 this week. And I mean, I have to say he had a great game against the Hurricanes when he did come on for Gibson. And also it gives Akira Ioane, Rieko Ioane's brother, the ability to play 6 with the absence of Robinson. So again, I mean, that's 2 sort of peripheral All Blacks, very high level Super Rugby players that you either didn't have in your match day 23 or were starting on the bench last week, and you've been able to bring them in to start 6 and 7. So yeah, look for a big game from Akira Ioane, and obviously continuing good form of Dalton Papali'i, along with Hoskins Satutu, who's sort of like the go-to number 8 for the Blues this year. I think that's going to be a pretty impressive back row that the Chiefs are going to have to try and contain. Perhaps that's why Gatlin is sort of considered one of the master coaches, and perhaps that's why he has gone in with essentially 3 loose forward replacements. Maybe he can see the danger, can see the Blues' danger there, and is really combating it essentially with 3 starting loose forwards, 3 reserve loose forwards. Maybe that's the way he feels, or maybe that's what he feels he has to do, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited to see Akira Ioane, Dalton Papali'i and Hoskins Satutu, go at it as a unit, as a back row unit. I think they're going to be pretty impressive. And that also means that you've got Tony Lamborn on the bench. So he's a New Zealand-born player who has American citizenship or residency. I believe his father is American, and he actually plays for the American national team, the USA Eagles. So, little shout-out hat tip there to America. You've got Tony Lamborn on the bench, who's a USA Eagle. He'll be playing for the Blues. I believe he was a former Hurricane back in the day sometime as well. So he's been in and around the New Zealand provincial setup and New Zealand Super Rugby teams for a while. Certainly, pretty good quality, right? To have an international flanker to back up those 3 players I've just mentioned. So yeah, I mean, not too much else to talk about with the Blues. I mean, because it's just very solid, very set. They're pretty much, repicking that successful team from last week. And good luck to them. They're looking very good. And why not roll on, right? So yeah, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just quickly leave you with the last 10 games between the 2 teams. I think it's a really good stat when you're having a little preview. How the teams matched up against each other over the last 10 games. And I mean, that's basically 4 or 5 years worth of Super Rugby, right? Generally speaking, the New Zealand teams playing each other twice a year. So I think it's a pretty good stat. So let's have a look. How do the Chiefs and the Blues match up from the last 10 games they've played? Well, the Chiefs have won 8. There's been 1 draw, and the Blues have won 1. So, Chiefs certainly do have the wood on the Blues over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. Although to be fair, probably the win records of all the New Zealand teams against the Blues over the last 4 or 5 years probably looks pretty good, or probably look pretty good. And it's not that Blues team this year. They're a different beast. So that history is maybe not as relevant as it might be in some other matchups. And if we just focus on what's happened in Chiefs country, like what's happened in the home game that we're focusing on here, it's been the Chiefs have won 5 at home. The draw and the win for the Blues were in Auckland, or in the Auckland region. So basically, yeah, last 10 games, Chiefs have won 8, 1 draw and 1 win for the Blues. And at home, the Chiefs have won the last 5. So, that's just something to think about when you're trying to do margin picking or betting or whatever, right? Chiefs have got a lot of good history there against the Blues over the last 4 or 5 years. But also remember, it's a pretty hot Blues, fairly underperforming Chiefs, and it's definitely a different beast this year up there in Auckland. just with some of the, with the coaching and the staff there, but also obviously some of the players that have been brought online as well. So yeah, maybe don't read into the history too much. But yeah, let's go to the Crusaders, or well, I should say the Hurricanes, right? Maybe that's a bit Freudian of me to say let's go to the Crusaders, but sorry, let's go to the Hurricanes game, because it is actually in Wellington, and it's it'll be second game of the rounds. Hurricanes at home in Wellington, and they'll be playing the Crusaders. So yeah, let's try and get into that. Let's try and get excited as a Hurricanes fan, even though felt pretty flat from that game against Auckland last week, or against the Blues last week, the game in Auckland last week. Felt pretty flat after watching that, and I was really hoping, well, I was very interested. I was hoping or excited to see perhaps some change of plans in terms of like the match day 23. Unfortunately, I think for me, the plans have not really, or what has been planned, I can't really say I'm too much on board with it. So the Hurricanes have also kind of gone down that strange route of not backing up a 10. So basically Chase Tiatia, the Hurricanes fullback, second week in a row, no Geordie Barrett, he's not the kind of fullback that can come in and play 10, certainly not at Super Rugby level. So you can't really rely on him as to be like a starting 10, a la like a Damien McKenzie or a Bowden Barrett, etc., and then come in and play 10 for the last 20 minutes of the game if needs be, due to injury or performance. So that rules you out of having like a starting player, kind of come in and play 10 if needs be, which really means that you have to back your 10 up on the bench, right? But the Hurricanes, for the second week in a row, have decided, no, we're going to start TJ Perenara. We're not going to have 10 cover, and in fact our 10 cover is going to be TJ Perenara. So we're pretty much going to ask TJ to be co-captain with Dane Coles. We're asking TJ to go up against probably the best 1-2-9 punch and probably in World Club Rugby in terms of Bryn Hall and Mitchell Drummond. Quite a big call, I know. But I mean, those two players are just seriously good Super Rugby level players, and they've been a real, 1-2 punch driver of why the Crusaders have been so good over the last 3 or 4 years. So TJ, hey, be co-captain, and then also take on, the 1-2 punch of, Bryn Hall and Mitchell Drummond, and then, just to finish things off, maybe we'll get you to play the last 15 minutes out of position at 10, against probably Richie Mwanga, or maybe David Havili, if things are going really well for the Crusaders, maybe Mwanga gets benched, and you can just match up against Havili. So it's kind of like, what kind of Mission Impossible kind of game are you giving TJ Perenara this weekend? I don't know. I'm sure TJ is pretty excited about all of those challenges and wants to do it as best he can. But really, I feel like he's playing at least 2, if not 3 positions there, or he's trying to be basically about 2 or 3 players there. So yeah, I feel like the Hurricanes really just haven't sorted out, what they need to do at 9-10 and how to back up basically 9-10 effectively in the absence of Geordie Barrett, etc. So yeah, sorry for that little diatribe there, but it's a really important position, like that 9-10, very important positions, right? Part of the spine, basically the axis of the spine, if you really want to get your 2, maybe 8, maybe not quite so important, but 2, 8, 9, 10, 15, you really want to get those 5 positions, 4 or 5 of those positions, really sort of with quality players, and I just don't feel like the Hurricanes are quite doing that at the moment. So let's go through the Hurricanes though. Let's pick out a few players who have sort of been rotated in or out or something. I'm not exactly sure how my format for this is, but I've just noted a few key Hurricanes players and a few key Crusaders players that we'll be seeing for the first time. So first key player for the Hurricanes, I think, is number 5. It's going to be Baya Fafita. So Fafita was listed on the bench last week, obviously covering kind of 6 lock. I think he is more of a 6 than a lock, but this week he's going to start lock. So there you go, Scott Scrafton has been put back to the bench. He's basically the Hurricanes out-and-out genuine, traditional classical lock. So I mean, I guess they'll be looking for him to come on sometime fairly early in the second half, because Fafita will be partnering James Blackwell, and I kind of feel like you basically almost have two kind of 6 or two kind of undersized locks in your, like, to represent basically at 4 and 5 to start as locks. And when you're up against, well, thankfully for the Hurricanes, not to jump too far ahead, Scott Barrett has been ruled out with injury, but they still have Sam Whitelock. So, you know, Fafita, slightly out of position, I would say, maybe not really a starting lock. Blackwell, again, I'd kind of say maybe kind of really like a 6, certainly an undersized lock. And, you know, they're going to be up against, you know, the world-class quality of Sam Whitelock. No Scott Barrett, thankfully, for the Canes. But, you know, you've got Mitchell Dunche starting and Luke Romano to come on and get a punch. So, you know, the Crusaders are still looking pretty reasonable, you know, with, say, conventional true locks in their 23. So, yeah, Fafita playing 10, playing 10 punches. Well, I mean, who knows, but with the Hurricanes at the moment, right, Fafita playing 5, or starting 5. Quite interesting. Adi Sabir has also been given the nod at 8, so Adi Sabir will start at 8. He was on the bench last week, came on, you know, certainly played some fairly decent minutes, probably about 30 minutes, I would imagine, in that second half last week, but was a little bit under par, it must be said. Not his fault, you know, coming back from a pretty big injury, like a 30-plus week layoff and big surgery. So I don't think you can really expect too much more from him, but he's going to get the start in the second week there. And again, it just kind of makes you think, like, Fafita got scratched right on, like, a very, very late scratching from the match day 23 last week on Sunday. He picked up a small injury basically in the warm-ups, and so, you know, you're now starting him, you know, a week later, okay? And then Savio played like 30 minutes and was a little bit underpowered, and now a week later you're starting him against the Crusaders. So it's kind of like the two guys you had on the bench, which seemed pretty useful, and we were really hoping to get some big energy out of a couple of, you know, All Blacks basically on the bench. That seemed like a pretty good policy last week. One got scratched before the game even started, and the other one was, you know, pretty underpowered. So what are we going to do as Hurricanes in 2020? Well, we're going to start both of those players basically against the Crusaders. So again, you know, we'll see how that works, or we'll see how that goes. But yeah, in terms of the backs, like, you know, you've still got Perenara, Jackson, Garden, Bashir doing the 9-10 thing. The midfield is unchanged as well. Aso still keeps his position. The wings are unchanged, and Chase Tiatia keeps the fullback role by default because Jordy Barrett is unavailable. So an unchanged Hurricanes backline, even though it was, you know, it has to be said, a fairly dysfunctional last week and underperforming. Basically, no one got the chop. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the bench. So you've got Gareth Evans has been pushed back to 20, so he's basically going to be, you know, bench cover, 6, 8, possibly even 7 bench cover for the Hurricanes, which I quite like. Although, to be fair, probably the way that he's playing, the form that he's showing at the moment, I'd probably rather see Evans to start 6 and maybe have Reed Prinsep, you know, covering those positions, or another player. I'm not particularly in love with Reed Prinsep's game at the moment, and so, yeah, you know, like, I'd probably rather would have just seen Evans start 6 if you're going to have Fafita at 5 and Adi at 8. But they're keeping his powder dry basically, hoping for a big second half from him, I guess. But I mean, another issue there is, like, when you have slight injury niggle to Fafita, when you have Savia coming back from huge off-season surgery, it's almost, you've almost signposted to the Crusaders who it is that's starting and who's not going to play a full 80, right? Seems pretty likely that Fafita's not going to get a full 80. He's going to get replaced with Scrapton, and it seems almost certain that, you know, Artie's not going to play a full 80, and he's going to get replaced for Evans. So you're not really making, I mean, if you don't go in with a 6-2 split like you did last week, then you're not really making the Crusaders guess too much. It's pretty obvious, right? It's kind of like, okay, Fafita's backed up by Scrapton, we'll see him replaced sometime in the second half. Okay, Artie's backed up by Evans, we'll see him replaced sometime in the second half. You know, that means that we can put a lot of pressure on, say, Duplessis Karifi, the 7. He's basically got no backup. You know, we can put pressure on, you know, Reed Prinsep, who's sort of underperforming a little bit. And again, like, there's not really anybody to replace him. You know, maybe Fafita can push one out to 6 if he's doing a really terrible job or just being ineffective again. But yeah, you know, it's really just signposting there that like we've got a couple of like suspects slash like not fully 100% fit guys, and we're basically like straight backing them up. Everybody else has to play a full 80 minutes. So, you know, the Crusaders kind of have the notice there. In the back line, Billy Proctor keeps his spot. He's going to be 22. I guess he's essentially backing up to midfield, can play wing as well. And Cobus van Beek gets a shot at 23. So last week, yeah, it was a 6-2 split. This week it's a more conventional 5-3 split for the Hurricanes. But again, I mean, I just got to look at Billy Proctor and Cobus van Beek, and I've got to say, they're like-for-like players. Like, they're basically guys. I mean, Billy Proctor probably a little bit stronger in the midfield, Cobus van Beek a little bit stronger at wing, but you know, Cobus van Beek can play centre, Billy Proctor can push out and play wing. They do the same thing. They're covering 4 or 5 positions for you. Neither of them can come in and play 10, or halfback obviously, but you know, they're just two like-for-like players in my opinion. Why would you not choose one of those players, in my opinion probably Van Beek, you know, to cover your back three, maybe your midfield, and then why not have quality backup 10? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm missing something in the media, or you know, I'm based in Taiwan, etc. This isn't my professional job, but you know, like Fletcher Smith and James Marshall, are they available? Because I mean, if they are available, I mean the Hurricanes, like why double, like you're picking the same player, or you're picking 2 players that do the exact same role and leaving 10, like no backup at 10 other than Perenara. Like how can James Marshall not be, you know, in that 23, essentially backing up Garden Bishop and Chase Tiatia, and you make the call who's underperforming the most here? Are they both playing well? Then just leave, you know, you don't need to play Marshall. Or one's playing badly, you know, bring him on. So yeah, pretty disappointed with what the Hurricanes are doing there. I think the Chiefs are doing some pretty crazy things with their bench, and I've got to say the Hurricanes looking pretty clueless, I think as well, with their bench and their team. So yeah. So let's move on to the Crusaders. Sorry, it's 32 minutes already. Like I've said a few times, I kind of want to keep these to 30 minutes. I haven't even managed to get to the 4th team or through 2 games. But yeah, let's have a look at the Crusaders. I'll try to be as quick as I can be here. So yeah, some key positions for me. 5 is Dunshea, which I've already talked about. Dunshea is coming in for Scott Barrett, which is a really late injury replacement. Number 6, look out for Cullen Brace. He's a really exciting player. Essentially like a 3rd lock. It's quite, but he does some great work at the breakdown. He's very good at the line out. He does some great work at the breakdown. They've got Billy Harmon playing at 7, which I think is a bit of a weakness. Hopefully that's something that the Hurricanes can expose. There must be some sort of injury to Tom Christie, who was playing really well in combination with Grace at the start of the year. So hopefully that's something that the Hurricanes can, you know, pick away at. Maybe a little bit more parity and your dominance at the turnover. If we go out into the backs, Braden Hennell gets the nod at centre, which is, you know, very exciting. I think like his pairing with Goodhue over this competition and maybe the next few years could well be, you know, some sort of new, pretty high level sort of All Black combination, in my opinion. Maybe one of a few different options, but you know, a quality player, you know, genuinely can, you know, cover, you know, 4 or 5 positions there for you. Basically anybody outside of 10, you know, is your man. And also Will Jordan's getting started at 15 as well, which again is pretty exciting. He's a real talent. Sort of had a few unfortunate injuries over the last year or 2, which has sort of limited how much he's been able to shine at Super Rugby level. But at the I-10 Cup level, he's an absolute beast. And, you know, I think he's going to push for, you know, All Black honours in the next few years if he gets an extended run, you know, with no injuries. And obviously, I guess, you know, you've got the likes of, you know, Brent Hall and Mwanga starting 9-10. Like I said, Mitchell Drummond's come on, get that 1-2 punch at 9, which means that David Hart-Bealey is actually, he's going to be your 23. No, sorry, he's your 22. They've actually got Lester Ganuku backing up the wings as 23, but Havili will be the 22, basically backing up 10-15, or backing up Luonga and Will Jordan. So I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, holy shit, like that's an insane backline. So I mean, that's just world quality backline there. I mean, I think that's an international level quality backline. I'll just go through it really quickly for you. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll just drop some names. So you've got Bryn Hall, Richie Luonga as your 9-10. You've got Jack Goodhue and Braden Enoy as your centres. You've got Sevu Reese and George Bridge as your wingers, and you've got Will Jordan as your fullback. Like, wow. And then, you know, who have you got to back that up? Mitchell Drummond can come on to play 9. Who else do they have there? Sorry, I'm drawing back. Oh yeah, David Havili is covering like your 10-15, and then Lester Ganuku 10-15 midfield, I guess, and then Lester Ganuku is, you know, covering the All Black wingers. It's like, geez, like that's going to be a handful. Like, you know, if the Blues were a handful last week for the Hurricanes, which they were, that backline was very good from the Blues. That Crusaders backline, I mean, if that gets relatively reasonable weather conditions and basically parity, or even slight dominance, you know, up front and 4-pack, it's going to be a really tough day. Tough Sunday afternoon, I think, at the office for the Hurricanes. But yeah, so just a couple of points I made at the bottom. Maybe I've talked about some of them. So Hurricanes definitely missing a trick, I think, with the locks, going with Blackwell and Fafita together. It's kind of like almost a couple of sixes that you're trying to make locks. A couple of blindside flankers, if you will, that you're trying to make locks. So Hurricanes going in with 2 undersized locks. I think they might get punished there. And remember last week the line-out was a real issue for the Hurricanes as well. So that could be pretty difficult. Again, another difficult area for them. What can you expect from Adi Savia? Maybe 50 minutes? Yeah, that would be good. Good luck to Adi. You know, he's a great player, I love him. But you know, I don't think he's actually like 100% ready to be taking on, say, the Crusaders and playing full 80 minutes. So it might have been a good idea to, you know, maybe start Evans and have Adi in the pocket. But anyways, they just went all in with Adi starting, so hopefully it goes well. Number 10, like I've talked about there, huge weakness, obviously huge strength for the Crusaders, having, you know, Richie Mo'unga, pretty much the All Black incumbent 10, and he's backed up by David Havili, so I don't think I need to say anything there. But for the Hurricanes, number 10, it's a shambles. You know, you're really hoping that Jackson Garden-Basham can just have a really great night and be slightly competitive in terms of his performance with Richie Mo'unga, and you really just have nothing to back that up. I mean, it seems like the play is to maybe get 60-65 minutes out of Jackson Garden-Basham, and then, you know, Perinari to finish the game, 10-15 minutes, we'll see what happens. And I guess just one extra kicker for the Perinari game, I think, is, can you be co-captain with Coles? Coles isn't going to play a full 80, so you will actually be the captain at the end of the game, and you'll be the captain at the end of the game playing out of position, and you will probably be the captain at the end of the game playing out of position and kicking goals if we need it, because there's no Jordie Barrett and we've started Jackson Garden-Basham. And also, you know, can you play that first sort of 60-65 minutes against kind of like the best 1-2 punch at halfback in Super Rugby, maybe in all of like World Club Rugby. How about that for an assignment, TJ Perinari? If you pass that exam, I think the Hurricanes will somehow like pulled it out of the fire. But I have the feeling that you're not going to be passing that exam. Like, that's just so much to ask from one player. But yeah, I'd love to be proven wrong. So yeah, anything else there? Well, yeah, like Crusaders, they lost Scott Merritt quite late during the week, so that's a little bit of a dagger for them. But like I've also said, they've got Sam Whitelock for this series, this competition, which is a great pickup for them, you know, due to coronavirus issues. And they've also got Mitchell Dunshea, out and out classical, good solid Super Rugby lock, and they've got Luke Romano, ex-All Black, been around forever and a day. So, you know, lost Scott Barrett, and I think they just kept walking on. And then yeah, right at the end there, just I said, you know, got to look out for that Crusaders 1-2 punch at halfback, and just the entire back line is complete class. It's just a world-class back line that I just talked about before. yeah, I think that's about it. Last thing to do, try and sign out here pretty quickly, is have a look at that home and away record, or sorry, the head-to-head matchup of the last 10 games. So if we have a look at Hurricanes Crusaders, the last 10 games, Hurricanes have won 3, the Crusaders have won 7. If you focus it on basically games in Wellington, the Hurricanes have won 2 and the Crusaders have won 1 in those last 10 games. So it's a little bit interesting. Yeah, I guess it's because there's been a few home semi-finals for the Crusaders. Of those 10 games, I think 7 of those last 10 games between the two teams have been in Christchurch. Only 3 of those 10 games have been in Wellington, for which the Hurricanes have won 2 of those 3 games, and the Crusaders have won 1. So, Hurricanes match up a little bit better at home. They certainly have, historically, but again, maybe it's a little bit of a different Hurricanes we're seeing, just as we're seeing a little bit of a different Blues this season. I think we're seeing a little bit of a different Hurricanes, especially in this Super Rugby Aotearoa series, and it's a positive Blues team that we're seeing. It's kind of a negative Hurricanes team that we're seeing, if you're comparing it to the last 3 or 4 years for the respective teams. But yeah, so very, very last thing to do there is just to, who's going to win these games, right? I'm not going to do margin. I do margin, and I play margin through CRU, which is like an online little fantasy rugby. It's mini sports, but I do a little bit of fantasy rugby there, or prediction for this series. There's no fantasy rugby for Super Rugby Aotearoa, not at CRU anyway. It's just a prediction format or tournament. So yeah, you just pick margin, basically who wins by plus 1, plus 5, plus 10, etc. So I do that, and I will tell you what I picked on Monday, Tuesday when I do my review of round 2. But I'm in a pool with like 12 other people. I'm in a few different pools actually, but I've got a sort of like a family and friends pool, and I don't really want to tell them. They may well see this video or this YouTube clip, and I don't really want to tell them what my margins are, if you know what I mean. I kind of want to keep it a secret. So I will tell the margins, in the review next week. But for now, I'm just going to pick the winners. So yeah, basically, I think it's going to be a double away win here. I believe the Blues look very set, look very confident, look very good last week, and I think that Chiefs selection issues is a little bit of a shambles. So yeah, I'm quite bullish on the Blues, and I think the Blues are going to win in Hamilton. And then on the Sunday, game 2, I think the Crusaders are going to win against the Hurricanes. Again, I don't think really any of the deficiencies, the key deficiencies from last week, were really addressed at all or in any effective way with the Hurricanes team 23 that's been announced. And yeah, I think that Crusaders team is chomping at the bit to get into the competition. It's going to be their first game out, first head out. They might be a little bit rusty, which may well save the Hurricanes. Might not be so much about good Hurricanes play, but just sort of like Crusaders forced errors or unforced errors. I think hopefully we'll keep this maybe a little bit closer than it might be if it was like a round 5, round 6, round 7 game. So yeah, hopefully the Hurricanes can get a little bit lucky there and keep it a little bit tighter, but I think it's going to be a pretty efficient win for the Crusaders. Yeah, I'll reveal my margins next week. Yeah, pretty hard to see it any other way there in the capital on Sunday, but I live in hope, and that's why we play the game, right? Or why we play the games is to see if the Chiefs and the Hurricanes can bounce back. Basically, yeah, good luck to all 4 teams. But yeah, I would definitely love to see a cheeky, Hurricanes pull one out of the fire, pull one out of the box. It would be amazing. But yeah, just to recap that, sorry, just rambling, going too long here. Blues to win, but I think to win quite close, which has historically been what's happened between those two teams over the last 10-15 games. It's been a lot of 7-point or less wins to primarily the Chiefs. So I see that trend continuing, but I see it being a close win, to the Blues. But on the other side there, I see the Crusaders being very efficient and winning by a pretty comfortable margin in Wellington. So thanks a lot for that. Going to sign out again. Too long, trying to make these like 30 minutes, and I'm at 45. So yeah, really quick for the sign out. You're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe here, that would be awesome. I also have a Facebook page, the Rugby Gods podcast. Can you please give me a like there? That'd be awesome too. If you go to my channel, my YouTube channel here, on the About tab, there's a link to that Facebook page, and there's also a Gmail address that you can contact me at. So those are great. Please just put a comment under the video if you want, or send me a private message on Facebook if you find my group, my page, which is the Rugby Gods podcast through Facebook. So yeah, that's about all I'm going to say there. Had a few messages recently, last 2 weeks, again from some interesting little, sort of people in the rugby commentary world. So yeah, hopefully, a few things are going to happen in the next couple of weeks involving me and maybe some other people. Might not be on this podcast, I might be on theirs, but either way, it'll be pretty awesome to do something like that. So yeah, thanks a lot. Stay safe. I hope you've had a great week. It's Friday afternoon where I am, Friday evening where I am. I've got to shoot and do some stuff in my life, and I hope you have a great weekend. And I hope the games are interesting. I hope everybody performs. I hope they're good, awesome, interesting games. I certainly think the Chiefs Blues game is going to be very interesting, very good, very competitive. Maybe in the capital down in Cape Town, it might just be a question of having to watch a bit of an exhibition. The Crusaders, quality outfit, come to town. But please, Hurricanes, do as much you can, do as best you can. I'll be supporting you on Sunday for sure. So thanks a lot for that. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching if you did, and I'm out with all of that. So go keep turning on. I'll see you again. Bye bye.